You're fulfilling your true purpose if you commit your life to the highest advantage of others. I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad because I'm serving a mission to serve my fellow human beings. Because the school system will never teach you about money. They teach people to be poor. Poor people say, I can't afford it, I can't do that, I don't have time, because this is an escape. The reason they're poor is they haven't failed.
It's that fear mentality. You play it safe and you don't introduce new risks into your life.
We got to change what we teach our kids.
Introduce a real different mindset.
How can I afford it? How can I do that? A question opens the mind, a statement closes the mind. One of the greatest ways to acquire great wealth is playing Monopoly in real life. So my game financially is business, number one. Second is real estate. And that's why I pay no taxes. My success comes from spirituality, not finance. Every time I failed, it was like, okay, what have I learned? I grow from it. But we have a mission to do. You do not belong to you. You belong to the universe. What does God want done that I might be able to lend a hand at doing? I don't think God likes people being poor.
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of.
I am super excited to share this conversation with Robert Kiyosaki. I first had the chance to speak with him over 5 years ago, before we had any of this studio. And now I got to go to Phoenix, Arizona to speak with this legend. He's the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is the #1 selling personal finance book of all time, over 30 million copies. And Robert has been there and done that. He started companies, built real estate empires, and taught people how to have a rich mentality. And that's the thing about Robert. He had 2 dads when he was a kid. One was his natural dad, one was his best friend's dad, and one had a poor mentality and one had a rich mentality. A poor person says, how can I afford that? The rich person actually goes out and says, what can I do to make this a great investment? And so that's what I love about Robert. He always looks at things in a great perspective. We had a great talk about his career, his wife, his time in Vietnam, and what it's like to really understand business today, and I know you're going to love it. But what I was really excited to do was help him launch America's first weekly cash flow summit. And this is a brand new way of making money. As a former Wall Street banker, I was super excited to share this type of investment strategy with the public for the very first time. You see, this is something we used to do in the banking industry all the time. And of course, as host of the event, I was able to secure exclusive rights to offer you a space to the summit. But this will not be available for very long. So if you want to see what I was doing with Robert in Arizona, click on the link below or go to londonreal.tv/cashflow and secure your spot. And I will see you on the inside for the summit.
London Real doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Real Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, we have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Robert Kiyosaki, the entrepreneur, educator, and investor, best known as the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the #1 personal finance book of all time. You've challenged and changed the way tens of millions of people around the world think about money, and you become a passionate and outspoken advocate for financial education. I'm here on location with you in Scottsdale, Arizona. Robert, welcome back to London Real.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed our last interview.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It's been a great day here, and yesterday as well, spending time with you.
Yesterday was one of the highlights of my life, so it was fantastic.
Well, it was you and me and Jim Rickards. And why was that the highlight of your life? What was happening that day that made you feel that way?
Well, you ever seen a kid, you know, like they're playing football or baseball, whatever the sport is, and they go onto the field and they meet their hero, you know, they'd be like meeting David Beckham or, you know, somebody like that. Well, to me, Jim Rickards and Naomi Prince and a lot of the people I run around with now were my heroes. I mean, they were the guys on the field. And I said, you know, God, they're so smart. They're insiders into this world. And so to actually be sitting next to Jim and working on projects together, and I'm going, why am I here? So that would be like, you know, David Beckham and I playing soccer together. I mean, it's not supposed to be possible, you know. So hanging out with Jim Rickards and Naomi and you, and it's like it's not supposed to be. It's impossible. But dreams do come true.
Because you always thought you were the outsider, and now you're hanging out with the quote-unquote insiders, and
Correct.
You're agreeing on everything with them.
Correct. And a lot of people get financial advice from outsiders. If you know, maybe a financial planner, a stockbroker, a real estate broker, but they're not on the inside of the deal. And one of the reasons I like being an entrepreneur and being a real estate guy is I'm always trading from the inside. I know the deal. I'm part of the deal. I am the deal, you know. But the average person who buys like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and saves money, they're outsiders. They have no idea what's going on between them and the real world of insight. So Jim Rickards and Naomi Prince, they were with, you know, Jim was with the CIA, long-term capital management, the Pentagon, and they're the inside on what's going on with money. Naomi Prince was with Solomon and Lehman Brothers and Goldman Sachs. They're insiders. And I was this little guy on the outside trying to figure out, what are those guys doing? You know, how are it's almost like, what's the wizard doing? You know, how is the wizard pulling these handles and all this? And we're all outside jumping around doing as they tell us. You know, you should save money. Okay, I'll save money. You should buy stocks. Okay, I'll buy stocks. You should put some money in bonds. Okay, I'll buy. And I said, there's a wizard in there. I want to know who that wizard is. And so Jim and these guys are as close to the wizard as I could get.
How does a 9-year-old kid in Hawaii, a poor kid, get to this point?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't poor by most people's standards, but I came from a family with a poor attitude, if you know what I mean. Because rich, poor, middle class, poverty starts with a fundamental attitude. So I was in Hawaii, I was 9 years old. My father was the head of education, you know, PhD. Very smart man, good guy. And for some reason, we moved across town and I went to a school with rich kids. So this is a little town called Hilo, Hawaii. You know, that's not on the map anywhere, but it is. It's a sugar plantation town. So when I was 9 years old, I moved to this rich kids school. And suddenly I realized I was poor because it's relative, you know, as Einstein, it's all relative. And my classmates were mostly white guys. And I was one of the few Asians in the class. And these guys, their fathers owned the banks, they owned the plantations, they owned the car dealerships, they owned the meat packing company, they owned the ranches. And I'm going, how come my dad doesn't own that? So I remember raising my hand when I was 9 years old, talking to my fourth grade teacher, and I said, you know, when am I going to learn about money? And she was this woman who should have retired 50 years earlier. She was so sick and tired of kids by this time. She says, the love of money is the root of all evil. And I said, what am I, in Sunday school? And I was this punky little 9-year-old kid. And she says, we don't teach money at school. I said, why not? And she couldn't answer me. And she got very flustered. She said, sit down, take your seat. And then I got curious. I said, why don't we learn about money? She says, go ask your father. He's my boss. So my father was the head of education, PhD, all that stuff. I go home and ask him, I said, why don't we learn about money in school? And he looked at me and says, because the government doesn't let us teach that subject. The government tells us what we can teach and what we can't teach. And I thought that was strange. And I said, but aren't we going to school to learn about money? He says, no, your job is to get a job. I said, but you get a job to earn money. He goes, no, you're supposed to just get a job. And I went, no, 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 no. Isn't the purpose of a job to earn money? He goes, you're correct. I said, so why don't I just learn about money? I can skip the job part, you know. And he got flustered and he said, look, and my father was, for Japanese, very tall, 6'4", and imposing man, good guy. But he says, if you want to learn about money, why don't you ask your best friend's father about money? And I said, why? That's Mike. So I asked him. He says, because Mike's father is an entrepreneur. And I said, what are you? He says, I'm an employee. I'm a government employee. I went, oh, what's the difference? He says, the difference is an entrepreneur must know about money, or they're no longer entrepreneurs. And he says an employee doesn't have to know anything about money, because the government will take care of them, the company will take care of them. So I'm all confused. But I took my dad's advice and I trundled over to Mike's father's office and knocked on his door and I said, hey, I'm here, 9 years old. Teach me about money. He says, beat it, kid, you know. But that's where the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad started. And finally, through persistence, my rich dad started teaching me about money on one condition. And that condition was he would never pay me. He says, the moment I pay you, you think like an employee. He says, that's the trap. Entrepreneurs work for free. And now I'm 9 years old, my head's cracking in half. He says, you never want a paycheck. You understand that, kid? I said, okay, I got it. And he says, well, how do I make money? He says, that's what entrepreneurs figure out. It's like a cat, which comes first, a cat or the cat chasing its tail. And I said, so how do I learn about money? So he would just break out a Monopoly game board. So I would work for free. I'd pick up cigarette butts, and he had hotels and restaurants, and I would clean and do menial tasks. And as I got older, I started getting into office work and marketing and accounting, and I was an apprentice basically, but I always worked for free. And he would teach me about money, but the way he taught me about money was playing Monopoly. And I finally one day I got upset. I said, well, when are you going to teach me about money? He says, what do you think we're doing? We're playing Monopoly. He goes, no, 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 no. What do you think we're doing? We're playing Monopoly. He says, what do you think we're doing? So I don't know. I'm teaching you about money. And then that's when, you have one green house. He says, there's many formulas for great success in money. There's thousands of them. But one of the best ones found on the game of Monopoly. It still is today. 4 green houses, 1 red hotel. I said, what? He says, one of the greatest ways to acquire great wealth is playing Monopoly in real life. 4 green houses, 1 red hotel. Well, is that all there is? He goes, that's it. And he says, what do you think I'm doing? And I went, I don't know. So then he took me out and he showed me his greenhouses. And 10 years later, when I was 19, I was now in school in New York, and I come back to Hawaii, and Rich Dad had bought the biggest piece of land smack dab in the middle of Waikiki Beach. And when you go to Waikiki Beach today, you'll see the Hyatt Regency Hotel. That was his hotel.
Just like the game of Monopoly.
Just like the game of Monopoly.
Acquired assets, and they became bigger assets.
He just kept what's called an assemblage, because that property wasn't that big at the time. So he had to buy out all the small guys. Because Waikiki was a little dirt water, little town. So he'd buy out this shop owner, buy that shop owner. And it took him a while, but he finally assembled this large piece of property. And then he and Hyatt put up this giant hotel.
You know,
it just sold for $800 million. So that's how I learned about money.
And that's because he refused to accept a paycheck.
He says that the moment you accept a paycheck, your brain goes dead. You know, you just got paid. He says, as long as you're hungry, you'll think. And he was a great, great teacher. So today, when people ask me what I do, they know me as the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I just say I play Monopoly. So I own greenhouses, I own big hotels, I own oil wells, golf courses, businesses. I'm just playing Monopoly. That's all I do.
You know, I re-listened to your book on the flight over from London, and I hadn't listened to it in maybe 6 years. And the first time I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I thought it was a book about money. But when I listened to it a couple days ago, I saw it differently. I saw it as a book about fear, about self-knowledge, about mindset, because you're just describing these people, and they're in this world that they don't want to acknowledge that they're in. It's almost a prison in their own mind.
Right.
Is that what you were trying to get across when you wrote that book?
Well, I don't know what I was trying to get across. I just, the fact of the matter was, I created this board game called Cashflow.
Yeah.
And I couldn't sell the board game. So I had to write a brochure. And the brochure I wrote was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So Cashflow came out in 1996. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad came out in 97. So the real fact of the matter is, Cashflow is about accounting. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a book on accounting. Income statement, balance sheet, statement of cash flow. But if you've ever taken accounting courses, there is no more course more boring than accounting. So to have Rich Dad, Poor Dad be a book on accounting and be the #1 personal finance book of all times, that says something. And it sold the cash flow game. And today there's thousands of cash flow clubs all over the world. And the mission statement was people teaching people. You can bypass that school system, because the school system will never teach you about money. The school system was designed to teach you to be an employee, which is important, or a doctor or a lawyer, a specialist, but never about money. So once I got old enough and I had already retired and I was rich and I was fairly well off, it was kind of a social conscience. I said, I have to share what I know. So that's why, and it took till 1996 for the Cashflow board game to come out, because I could see this crash coming, which came out in 1998. And then Rich Dad, Poor Dad came in 97. And the story goes, every publisher turned me down. They said, you don't know what you're talking about. Because they said savers were losers, your house is not an asset, and the rich don't work for money. And so the publishers are like my dad, academic superstars, you know, they're the A students in school. And so they turned the book down. And it took going by self-published route. You know, a lot of network marketing companies picked up the book, like Amway and those guys. And they picked up the book to help recruit, because it's about financial independence. They're about the same thing I am. And then Oprah called in 2000. And then the next thing I'm on Oprah, and I went from obscurity to world famous, you know, overnight success in 2000. And the book has been on the New York Times bestsellers for 7 years, until the New York Times took it off. They said it had been on too long. But as you know, I mean, most people in publishing or journalism, they're on the other side of the coin of capitalism, you know. So they don't like guys who make money. And that's like my poor dad side. So that's kind of the story. And, you know, I play Monopoly in real life. I don't need a job. I don't have a retirement. I don't need a retirement. I don't want the government to take care of me. But I felt a social responsibility to teach. And that's what my rich dad did for me.
And you said the book is about accounting, and it is an amazing book on accounting because it makes it understandable.
Yeah.
And I took accounting in business school, and I know what you mean.
It's boring.
It's boring.
Yeah.
But it is also a book about your own fears, and I think that's why it resonates with people, because you're telling them things they know is true. They know when they look in the mirror they're not making the correct choices, they're not being disciplined, they're doing the wrong thing, and they know they're unhappy, in fear their whole lives, waiting for the next paycheck. And
it's understandable. You know, we all have fear. You know, to be truthful, we all have fear. It's just how you deal with it. And, you know, Einstein said, you know, imagination is more important than knowledge, but knowledge empowers imagination. And what most people lack is real business knowledge, like accounting, you know, like debt, like taxes. You got to know that stuff, but they don't teach it in school to anybody. So, and then when people ask me, how did your rich dad learn this when your poor dad, a PhD, didn't? And the answer is very simply, my rich dad, who's my best friend's father, his father died when he was 13. So rich dad had this family business at 13 to run. So he had to drop out of school, which was his blessing. You know, there's blessings, and you know, sometimes a blessing doesn't look like a blessing, but it turned out to be a blessing. And then his teachers became his bookkeeper, his accountant, his attorney, his banker, his real estate agents. So he has what I call real teachers, not these fake teachers in school. You see, most teachers in school, they're out of ethics. They teach subjects they themselves don't practice. You know, I had the same problem in my MBA program. I got into arguments with the marketing teacher because the guy didn't have a business. And then I got into arguments with the accounting teacher because the accounting teacher didn't know accounting. I knew more about accounting than him because I actually worked in bookkeeping in my rich dad's companies. And so I'm not an accountant, but I understand accounting. So that was the end of my school years because I understood what a fake teacher is. A fake teacher is somebody who just wants a job and they'll teach anything. You know, they teach you how to shine shoes if you pay them more money. But they really don't know what they're teaching. For example, my calculus teacher, went to military school in New York, and I asked the teacher, I said, you know, I'm in my third year of calculus now. It was called strength of materials. I said, am I ever going to use this stuff? He goes, no. You know, I said, why do you teach it? He says, because I get paid. I said, do you ever use it? He goes, no. And that's why, you know, you have to, in life, one of the things I suggest to people, you got to find a real teacher versus a fake teacher. And a fake teacher is somebody who doesn't do what they teach. And a real teacher is doing what they teach every day. So my accountants, my attorneys, they're in it every single day. And that's how I learn, because every day I'm solving problems in my business. So I have accountants and attorneys and bankers and all these people on speed dial because I'm solving problems with my team. That's how I got smart.
That's how you got smart. How are we doing 21 years later since this book was published? There's more information out there than ever. We've got the YouTube, we got internet, everything. Are people better educated about money?
No, they're worse off. I mean, you know, I have my little Rich Dad radio show, and tomorrow I'm interviewing these team of, I think they're educational psychiatrists, and their book is called Coddling of the American Mind. Is how our school systems are making our students weaker. So in school, they have these things called now trigger effects. So you can't, as a teacher, you can't say anything that might upset the student. They don't want anything that might jar their point of view. So if I went into school, I'd be thrown out because I threaten them. I would, you know, and to me, isn't school about opening your eyes and minds to new ideas? But that's now out of the system. So everybody's got to be PC, you know, politically correct now. And it's killing us. It's killing the brains of our kids. They're going backwards. But in their minds, they're more enlightened. You know, they might be. But if I didn't have ideas that shook me, I wouldn't learn anything new. But now these trigger mechanisms, you know, like they don't let you have peanuts anymore. You know, so they found out if you take peanuts away from a child, their propensity to have peanut allergy goes up. So you get out a child, you say you can't have peanuts. So 17% will find out they're allergic to peanuts. But if you gave kids peanuts, only 3% would be allergic to peanuts. And that's kind of the metaphor the book starts with. He says, we're actually making our students weaker in school.
Yeah. You did a corporate retreat here about a week ago. You do it every year for the last 21 years, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or Rich Dad headquarters.
Right.
And you bring all your people together. And you said you started talking about something new that you didn't always have as a theme of your retreats. What was that?
Well, this year, and I'm putting it back into the business, was my success comes from spirituality, not finance. And what happened was when my wife and I started Rich Dad back in 1996, actually, we left the spirituality out. And then the corporate types came in, you know, the MBAs and the accountants and attorneys, and they tried to make it into a business. And I said, no, we're just a bunch of merry men who are kind of like Robin Hood and his gang.
Are you Robin Hood? Taking from the rich and giving to the poor?
No, I don't believe it. I don't believe in giving to the poor.
But you're giving knowledge to the poor.
Yes. That's a very big difference. You see, people say, well, why don't you give the poor money? So the only problem with that is it just creates more poor people.
Give a man a fish, he fishes for the day, or eats for the day.
Yeah, you give a man a fish, you get a lot of people who want more fish, you know? But you teach them to fish.
But you are the Robin Hood of knowledge, because I see you giving this knowledge out, and do the rich people cringe and say, don't tell them that, Robert?
Yes. Don't tell people what you know. Right. Keep them poor. But, you know, unfortunately, the poor, as was in the Bible, I'm not real religious, the poor will always be amongst us, because it starts up here.
Right, it's that fear mentality.
It's in their words, you know, and the words become flesh. Again, I'm not really religious. I flunked out of Sunday school also. But when they say I can't afford it or I can't do that, they go down. They become what they say. And I made so many people, I can't afford it. You think I'm made of money?
Your mom used to say that. Your mom used to say that.
My dad.
Your dad.
My PhD dad, he says, what do you think I am, made of money? I can't afford that. And my rich dad would say, that's why he's poor. Poor people say, I can't afford it, I can't do that, I don't have time. Because it's an escape. It's an escape, you know what I mean? It's easy to say, I can't afford it. Oh, I'm too tired. Oh, I can't go to the gym. You know, when you could go to the gym, but no, I can't. Truth is, I'm just too lazy to go to the gym.
And you play it safe, and you don't introduce new risks into your life, and so...
I have job security.
Right. And your rich dad used to say what instead of, I can't afford it?
How can I afford it? How can I do that? You know, what would it take, or why should I do that? He says that a question opens the mind, a statement closes the mind. See, when you say, I can't afford it, your mind shuts down, and you become what you say. You know, like, I struggle with weight all the time. You were telling me that you were on a vegan diet and all that.
Yeah.
You know, I go on a vegan diet 3 times a year. It's one of the most miserable things in the whole world, but I have the discipline to do it for 21 days. And then I'm back to pigging out again, you know. But the thing is that we become creatures of our own habits. And until we break the habit, we don't change. So I have my retreats twice a year, 3 days. People come from all over the world, and we study together. And this time we went back to spirituality.
Spirituality, most people they can't believe what they're hearing from Robert Kiyosaki, that Rich Dad, Poor Dad was originally about spirituality, because they think it's all about the money. It's not. Yeah.
You know, people say, well, money is not that important to me. Then if money is not that important to you, money is not important to you. I mean, you know what I mean? I don't care about money. The money doesn't care about you. You know, the word does become flesh. Right. Or I'll never be rich. Or the favorite one is the rich are greedy. It's the poor that are greedy. You know, if you think about it, because to be rich, you have to give something. You know, I have to produce books and games, and I purchase real estate, I provide housing, provide jobs and all that. That's why I'm rich. But greedy people produce nothing. Oh, no, it's the rich that are greedy. And I'm going, hey, sports fans, you know, you point a finger forward, 3 are pointing backwards. And so, as we know, there's a big attitude problem against the rich today.
I had a guest on my show recently and he said, poor people are selfish. Yeah. Hit a lot of people below the belt. And he said, no, think about it. These people are selfish. They're always complaining about their problems. They're always focused on their own issues.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Well, the way you get rich is you solve other people's problems.
Right. That's how you create value.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If you could cure cancer today, you'd be a trillionaire. You'd be an instant trillionaire. No, I'm just too busy to work on that. I think I'll play golf instead. Yeah.
Tell me about how you bring spirituality back into a company, a corporation, or Rich Dad.
Well, because it's a business, I can't force anybody to do anything. But we study spiritual books. Like the last book we studied was The Power of Now by Tolle, T-O-L-L-E. And then before that, we studied those types of books. We also study finance books. But then I encourage meditation and this process called clearing. Tolle talks about we have pain bodies in our, it's like maybe your father did something to you 50 years ago. Well, that pain is still there. And meditation doesn't get to it. So there are people with the precision, it's like a laser guided to go in there and remove the mental and emotional pain. So there are processors who can do that. So at our events, we have these processors and they're made available to people. Now, does everybody participate in it? No.
Right. You have to have a little faith.
It doesn't work.
Right. Yeah, and I was trained as an engineer, and science told me that none of this stuff works. But when I meditate and I practice yoga and I do these things, I do find pain leaving my body. So again, I have to ask myself, am I stuck in that poor dad mindset of believing everything everyone tells me and not making some decisions for myself?
Yeah. Well, when people ask, like, how did I get on Oprah? How did I write a book with Donald Trump, now President of the United States? Not that I'm endorsing him. He's much hated. Good man, though.
I want to talk about him.
But anyway, how could I have done that? Well, it wasn't my brain. It was, Oprah had me on the program because she's concerned also. Trump and I wrote the book together because we both had rich dads, and we both are advocates for financial education. And a lot of people just hate him because he's rich or he's obnoxious. He is obnoxious, I can't give it that. But we didn't get together for about money because we both had rich dads who taught us how to make money. Our schools don't teach that. Our schools teach almost the exact opposite of that. So anyway, how does a guy like me, a little kid with no money, and it wasn't I was poor, we're very middle class, I think my father was making about $20,000 a year. And when I graduated from college, I was making $120,000 a year. 6 times the amount he made. And I was 21 years old. And he goes, how'd you do that? I said, I didn't go to the same school you went to.
You used your mind in a different way.
No, I just followed my heart.
Okay.
I went to school to be a ship's officer to sail. So I sailed all over the world. And back in, this was in the 60s, if you sailed into the war zone, Vietnam, which I did, you got double the pay and no taxes. So that's how I was making $120,000 a year. And I come back, my father's still making $20,000 a year. I'm making $120K. And he can't understand it because he's a poor man in mind and in soul. He says, you've become like one of those rich guys. And I said, just because I have money? I'm in the war zone, I'm doing this. But it violated all the core values. See, the reason, as you had, is it Lipton?
Bruce Lipton on my show.
Bruce Lipton. Yeah. He says poverty is passed on. It's taught in your families. And middle class is taught in families. And I was really happy that, he endorsed Rich Dad, Poor Dad on your program. Because he says, I was taught by a rich man. And so the people right now who are sitting at home, who are struggling financially or worried about money or unhappy, they may be making a lot of money, but unhappy with what they're doing, it was probably taught to you. Your super ego was taught, get a job, work hard, or you'll never be rich, or the rich are evil, or whatever.
And until you change your mindset, money won't help you, right?
Correct.
And we see that with people that win the lottery, people that make more money, they still have the same problem.
Right.
Because they have that poor man's soul.
Right. If you're poor, you'll always be poor.
That's really hard for people to understand.
Yeah, the money will disappear that fast. Just like most pro athletes, they make millions of dollars, and 65% are bankrupt 5 years later. It's because they come from poor families. Now you tell them that, they get very angry at you. It's not, it's the rich fault. It's you guys ripped me off and government ripped me off. But unfortunately, what Mr. Lipton was saying, it's passed down genetically. That's the frightening thing. So what Mr. Lipton was saying, what Trump and I are saying, and what Jim Rickards and Nomi Prinz and all, we're saying we got to change what we teach our kids.
Right. Try to change that, that soul, that DNA, and introduce a real different mindset.
Yeah. Well, they've got to teach them, as Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Yeah, but you got to have the basic knowledge of taxes, debt, financial statements, and all that. If you don't want to learn it, I can't help you. So my poor dad never wanted to learn what my rich dad was teaching me.
Right. You wrote books with Trump because you both were passionate about teaching this knowledge. You both had rich dads that opened your minds up to possibilities. And again, it's almost like an investor's mentality. How can I afford this? You're thinking about everything in life as an investment, invested of time, of money. It's an amazing mindset to have. What was that process, writing books with Donald Trump? Not one book, but 2 books.
Right.
And what did you learn from him as a man before he even became president?
Well, there's no 2 Donald Trumps. What I mean by that is what you see on TV is what he is. He will not BS you. You know how a lot of politicians have 2 sides? Trump has one side, and it's the one that's present at that moment. So the thing I appreciated about him, I always knew where I stood. I didn't have to guess. He'd tell you up front.
Right. Jim Rickards yesterday, he said, I know that guy. He's a kid that grew up in Queens.
Yeah. He's a tough guy.
Yeah.
Very tough. And Queens was not too far from where I went to school in New York.
Okay.
And those guys are tough.
You're tough too.
Yeah. We grew up tough, But to a lot of people, that's offensive. That's a new thing about in school, triggering. You can't offend me in any way. Can't scare me. Don't give me peanuts. Okay. And we're getting weaker and weaker and weaker, in my opinion.
Yeah, I hear this from a lot of men in your generation, you and Trump, and say the political correctness is killing us.
Yeah.
It's killing us.
Yeah. When I was a kid, we teased each other all the time and all that. You can't say anything anymore.
Right.
You can't tease anybody because they'll sue you. I'm afraid, in my position, I'm never alone with a woman by myself because I can get sued that fast. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't fool around at all. I love my wife, been married 33 years. But today, you can get accused of anything. You're guilty.
Right.
It's something sick in our society.
Will this change in the next 50 years? It has to, right?
Well, one of my best teachers was R. Buckminster Fuller. He created the geodesic dome and all that. Yeah. And he was kind of the guy that straightened me out spiritually. And he always talked about he talked about generalized principles. And these are principles that are always true, no exceptions. So if you drop a stone on the water, the ripple always goes out this way. It's called precession. He says there's no exception. You can't drop a stone in the water and there's no ripple. It's always a ripple. So no matter what we do, we're always creating ripples. So it's called precession. Ephemeralization is our ability to do more with less. So you look at our cell phone now, it has more horsepower than the Sperry computer 50 years ago. That's doing more with less. So humans are getting more and more powerful. We have more power to us. Unfortunately, we're not evolved as human beings. It's horrifying. We're more antagonistic, more antisocial. Social media is antisocial. I don't even get on the thing personally. I'm very controlled at what we say, not like Trump, but because it's so antisocial today. People are so antagonistic. That's the danger part. So the reason I'm speaking on spirituality, we got to evolve. It means meditation, it means yoga, it means praying, it means going to church, whatever it takes. But you got to get back to calm and peace and meditation.
What do you make of all this fighting that's going on? You know, I don't live in America anymore, but everyone tells me it's hard. It's hard.
Horrible.
It's hard going to a dinner party because arguments break out.
Fight.
There's fights everywhere. We're fighting with each other. We're fighting with the environment.
Right.
How does this play out, and how do you view that?
Well, that's what I was getting at. So Fuller talked about the generalized principles. One generalized principle is emergence through emergency. So when you look at the word emergency, the base word is emerge. And what Fuller says, the only way humans evolve is via emergency.
Crisis.
And a big one's coming. And it's going to be, as we all know, our banks have ripped us off immensely. They're just a bunch of crooks. I don't know how they can live with themselves. But, you know, the bankers rip off trillions and they get bonused in billions. Nobody goes to jail. That's the sickness of our society. So that's why Trump and I write about financial education. It's almost like self-defense. It's almost like taking judo against our own government and our own banking systems and Wall Street. So that's why we're here with, you know, Jim Rickards and Nomi. It's kind of self-defense, teaching people what schools will not teach us.
I spoke to you yesterday and asked about the next 3 weeks. You're traveling all around the world. And I said, Robert, why are you traveling so much? And you said, because I need to let people know that this crash is coming and that these problems are out there. You feel like you have a mission to let people know about this.
It's a sense of that, yes. And you know, why do I have, you know, I have bad luck too. I've had financial crashes. I've had people stab me in the back, but they're all good because I grow from it. That's spirituality.
Right.
You know, people who are afraid of making mistakes, like they teach in school, they don't ever grow. Because spirituality is there's good and there's bad, there's right and there's wrong, there's up and there's down. Most people only want to be right. They only want to be positive. Well, you can't have that. That's not reality. Your
first two businesses, the wallet business was up and then failed, and your next one was up and failed, but you would have never gotten here without those failed. Quote unquote bad events.
Yeah.
Should we stop using that word bad?
Yeah, every time I failed, it was like, good. It's okay, what have I learned? And the average person, the reason they're poor is they haven't failed. You know, they play it so safe. They haven't made any mistakes like they taught in school. That means they don't learn anything. That's why the school system's actually fundamentally corrupt. It's anti-education.
Right.
Don't make mistakes and don't ask for help. And if I didn't ask for help, I have my accountants, my attorneys, my bankers, and all that. You know, I go into business like a rugby team. You know, boom, boom, and we kick butt. But the average guy is standing there, oh, I'm an A student, I'm going to do this all on myself, and a bunch of rugby players run you over, and you go, well, they're not playing fair. You know what, you're playing stupid. You should have a team. You should have accountants, attorneys, and bankers, and all that stuff. But that's not the game I want to play. I said, then don't play the game. You know, the game of business is played with accountants, attorneys, bankers, I hate to say it, politicians. You know, you got to know the game.
And you got to play it hard.
Yeah, and you know, as I was saying to you, is that I love England because my favorite game is rugby. And I had the benefits in the 70s of playing twice with Blackheath. And that was like going to, you know, almost going to heaven to be in England playing rugby and then going to Twickenham, you know, for the World Cup. And then I was in Australia to watch Johnny Wilkinson, Sir Johnny Wilkinson, beat the Aussies in the most powerful rugby game ever played, I believe. It was England versus Aussie. And they went to 2 overtimes. And you talk about the spirit of the players coming out. There were guys falling down the field, not because they were tired, they were cramping up. They couldn't go anymore. And that Wilkinson, which I forgive him for, kicks that field, you know, you go. But that's the game. And a lot of people would rather sit in the stands than be in the game.
That's why you like rugby. Because they're on the field, they're competing, they're going head to head. Right. It's raw.
Rugby is a team sport, but so is soccer. The rules are different. You know, when I went out for soccer, so you mean I can't hit anybody? I think I'll stay with rugby. You know? And other people are golfers. They play by themselves. And so everybody's different. So what I say to young people is, you find your game. So my game financially is business, number one. Second is real estate. And that's why I pay no taxes. That's why Trump pays no taxes. Legally, it is a combination of business and real estate that gives us an unfair advantage over employees because they don't know what to do.
There was an article in the New York Times on the front page about a week or two ago, and it was about Jared Kushner, right? So Trump's son-in-law, and about
you saw that same article?
Yeah.
Did you pick it up?
Yeah, I read it, and it was all about how
depreciation.
And yeah, he didn't pay any taxes, and his net worth was growing, and everyone's arms were up. Look at this guy; he's not paying taxes.
Yeah.
And this is the New York Times.
Yeah.
Okay, so considered a front runner in the news, showing us how bad this was. That this entrepreneur who grew his net worth by like 3 times or 4 times over the last 3 or 4 years, and I thought of you. What does that tell us? What do you see when you see that article?
Well, the New York Times article is an employee mindset, and they have no financial education. Somebody said Kushner has a loophole called depreciation. I go, you idiot. It's illegal. It's not a loophole. Depreciation is what the government wants us to do. So in other words, there's 3 things. There's appreciation, amortization, and depreciation. So the way guys like Trump and Kushner and the rich guys do it is called the McDonald's formula of business. So McDonald's has a business, right? They have a hamburger stand. And when you interview Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, if you saw the the movie, The Founder, he gave the formula away. The business of McDonald's is not hamburgers. The business of McDonald's is real estate. And that's the formula. So every time you go past a McDonald's stand, oh, you deserve a break today, eat at McDonald's. But they're not seeing the real game. The game is that little hamburger stand is buying the most expensive real estate in the world. So today, McDonald's owns more real estate than the Catholic Church. But the rich are evil and all that. They just can't see it. So I have the Rich Dad Company in the business side. So let's say I make $1 million. I don't want to pay tax on that. So I take that $1 million, instead of spending it on something stupid, I buy a piece of real estate, so let's say for $5 million. So I go from $1 million to $5 million. Then I appreciate, depreciate, and amortize that $5 million, and it offsets my $1 million in tax. And when I speak to average people, they go,
yeah, even though they can do it too.
It's the law. It's available to everybody in every country and all over the world. And I travel all over the world. And they go, oh, it's good for you in America, but you can't do it here. And I say, see the McDonald's? Yeah, he's doing it. No, they're not doing it. I said, you know how much McDonald's is not on cheap real estate. But the average person is so blinded because they went to school and they were taught by poor people. And as Lipton says, it's handed down for generations.
Yeah.
And that's what Trump and I and Nomi Prinz and Jim Rickards and I are trying to break. I'm against the school system because it's actually teaching people to be poor. Right. It's just tragic what is happening in our school system. You can't say anything offensive to me. You must be politically correct. No peanuts. And they're getting weaker and weaker and weaker.
Yeah. Tell me about the Marines and Vietnam. I mean, if you look at your life, Robert, you're kind of a badass. You're playing rugby, you're going into the fray, you're starting companies. I mean, this takes, you have to be tough.
Yeah.
What did you learn in the Marines?
Well, I wasn't always that way. One of the reasons I went to military school in New York was because I was a complete screw up as a kid.
Just like Trump.
Yeah, I was a surfer in Hawaii. My father, the head of education, would come and yank me out of the water, because if the surf was up, I was surfing.
Do you
I
miss
was
surfing?
in serious trouble. I knew that I was Fs,
Okay.
flunking out. And I intuitively knew I needed discipline. If I went to the University of Hawaii, I'd still be surfing. Because my dream was someday I'd be a pro surfer. But that dream was kind of in the way of reality. So I applied Because then my father said to me, my poor dad, he says, "You're so worthless as a student, I'm not going to pay for your education." I said, "Well, thank you, Dad. You just did me a big favor because now I have to think." You see, when a parent pays for the kid doesn't have to think. You know, and thinking is pretty important. Right. So I had to figure out, how am I going to get a free education? So when I was 16, I started applying to schools, and I got two of the best schools in the United States. One was the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis, Maryland, and the United States Merchant Marine Academy, Kings Point, New York. So when I looked at Naval Academy, I looked at Merchant Marine Academy, Annapolis graduates were making $200 a month. Kings Pointers were making like $2,000 a month. So it's $2,000 versus $200. So I went to military school because I needed the discipline, and it was really good for me. You know, the moment you get up, somebody's yelling at you. "You stupid son of a..."
Hard.
Hard. And I remember the first week I was crying, you know, I was so upset. Such a little baby, you know. They yelled at me. That's all they're doing, is yelling at you. They're calling you names. Oh, they call me names. Oh. You know, so that was when I toughened up. Because it's only words, you know, but there were words of intent to make me stronger. So when I graduated from the academy, again, like I said, we're making $120,000 a year if I sailed into Vietnam in the war zone. And I would have gone to Vietnam to make money. But unfortunately, the war was still on in 1969. And my brother got drafted. And my family samurai from way back when, all the sons fight. So I had, you know, 5 uncles go to fight in Europe in World War II, and 2 uncles fought against the Japanese in World War II. One got captured by the Japanese.
Wow.
That was a painful story.
I can imagine.
But anyway, so it's in a tradition to fight. So now I'm a little toughened up from the academy, and instead of taking the $120,000 a year, I took the $200 a month and joined the Marine Corps and went to flight school. And in flight school, it's a long story, but there was this one aircraft I wanted to fly. It was a prop plane. And they canceled it. They said, "No more of these prop planes." So I'm lost. So they wanted me to fly the C-130, you know, the 4-engine prop job. And so I went into it, and it was the most boring thing. You know, 13 hours. The only thing good about the C-130, it had a coffee maker. You know, so I could sit there, drink coffee, and... So I knew airlines was out. That is the most boring job on planet Earth. So I go to my monitor, you know, the guy who handles my career. I'm still a, you know, first lieutenant now. And I said, "What's the fastest way to Vietnam?" And he said, because the war was winding down.
And you wanted to see some action.
Yeah. I said, I didn't join the Marine Corps to sit in the back, you know. He says, well, the number one fastest way for you to go is go to Camp Pendleton in California, and you fly the gunship or the Cobras. I said, oh, really? That sounds interesting. Why is that? He says, because they're dying. Your life expectancy is 30 days.
30 days.
Yeah, we were dead in 30 days because it was a nasty of all mission. So that kind of, as a 21-year-old kid, I said, I'll do it. And that was the best decision. So I got sent to Camp Pendleton and then onto an aircraft carrier off Vietnam. And it was flying a strike into Vietnam, you know, where they have these Jolly Green Giants and these huge troop transports. Yeah. And so then they have the twin rotor 46s. And then they always had two gunships escorting all the way in. Right. So we were the gun escorts going in. And we're flying the strike. We knew we were losing. You know, the war was over. We had lost. America didn't want to fight anymore. So nobody wanted to be the last guy to die, you know, including me. So we're flying in, and then that was my first real spiritual experience. I'd been there I had flown many missions, but they're all safe. I always came back. And this one day, I was up there at 1,500 feet, waiting for the troop helicopters to come up so we could fly a strike into Vietnam. And my engine quit. And I don't, you know, and this is the difference of training, you know, knowledge, is that when the engine quits on a gunship, a helicopter gunship, we have a crew of 5, ammunition, 18 rockets, 6 machine guns. That thing doesn't fly. And as soon as that engine quit, boom, all the alarms go off. But this is why people die in real life. When that fear hits them, they pull back. You know what I mean? They go, it's too frightening, I'm not going to do it. That's why people die. They pull back. So the Marine Corps trains us so well. When that engine quit, we're trained to push forward.
Yeah, auto-rotate.
Well, more than auto-rotate.
Just push forward.
You dive. You have to dive to shift the flow of air through the blades. And you dive and you drop your power and you're going down like this and everything goes instinctively. Are you training? Mayday, 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 Echo Whiskey 96. I'm calling, you know, flight, you know, da-da-da. My crew of 5, automatically, they're jettisoning the machine guns, the ammunition, doors are coming off. It's just so well trained. We're like a little machine coming down like this. And then also I'm looking down and then we start to auto-rotate. But I had to shift the air through the blades, if that makes sense. Then it rotates. And it goes, and going down like this, I'm looking at what they call the jaws of death. I'm looking at my death. And it's going straight down towards it. It's beyond fearful. And then this is what happened. I'm an exterior. And a lot of people don't know what that means, is I was suddenly up in the air, watching myself, watching my crew flying to our death. And it was the most peaceful, surreal feeling. You know, it was only about probably a second, but I went exterior and I went, whoa. And it was kind of, you can choose to live or you can choose to die at this moment. But that was my first, what I call real spiritual experience. You know, it's like, whew. The aircraft just keeps going, you keep it straight for that water. And I said, why people don't succeed in real life is they pull back. And you've got to keep the nose down towards that water because we're flying so we're dropping like a rock. And so and the fear, I guess the fear was so intense, I went out. Yeah. And I could see my crew. I just felt nothing but love for them. And I said, holy mackerel. You know, I love it. You know, it was this pure, God, they're like, they have families, they have kids, and we're going to our death. And so at the very last minute, exactly as the Marine Corps or the Navy trains you, you pull back slowly and the aircraft goes, it just misses the water. And then we're skimming above the water. And then you shift your peripheral, not from forward to sideways. And you're watching the water, the blades, and we're watching the water, I'm watching my gauges, there's no engine. And at the last minute, slowly pull back. As you're sinking into the water, the aircraft goes like this. I can still hear it today. Then you rock the nose forward, and it goes into this flat position. And just before you hit the water, you go all the way up because you just saved all that speed on the blade. That's the auto rotate right there.
Yeah.
And so the blades grabs the air, goes whoop, 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 whoop. And it's quiet again. You can see the water, and the aircraft just settles into the water. And then what happened, the blade hits to the right first. It tore the engine off, it tore the transmission. It came through the canopy, you know, and this water's filling up. And you go, again, it's a surreal feeling. I said, I have a choice to live or die now. You know, if I mess up, I'm dead. And, you know, all the training comes in, okay, get out, get out, get out. And so the aircraft just rocks and sinks. It blows up because the engine's so hot. There's smoke and there's steam. The blade came through the canopy because it hit so hard. I had a camera sitting here, and later that day when I got rescued, the camera had a cut across the front of it. So the camera saved my life. Otherwise, whatever hit me would have gone through me. So the lens was just crushed. And the aircraft wobbles, sinks, and go upside down. And we're getting out, the smoke and the steam, and then I start taking head counts. I see the first guy pop up, go 1, 2, 3. So, where's my co-pilot? And it was quiet. There's a steam and smoke and burning. So where's Ted? Where's Ted? And all of a sudden, Ted comes popping up, and he had some expletives. He says, "You rolled it towards my side." I said, "I didn't roll it anywhere, Ted. Where you are going already." And I'm hugging him, saying, I was so glad to see the guy alive, because if he had drowned, that would be a pain body in your soul at that moment, Yeah. And then 4 hours later, we were rescued. And I got back to the ship. That next thing is that it's shark-infested water, so we're treading water for 4 hours. Oh my God, because the crew before us was eaten, and so we're just treading water out there. This ocean swells. So I get up, and then they get on the carrier, and we sit down for the debrief. And I still remember to this day, I said, I can't tell them what just happened. I couldn't talk to them about going exterior. So it just became this mechanical engine down, and switch power, cut the batteries, became technical, not spiritual. But that was my search. I wanted to find out after that, after I got out of the Marine Corps, I wanted to find out where I went. And so I started doing a lot of these New Age workshops and goofy things. And they had Shirley MacLaine, who was into past lives. And, Tony Robbins was walking on fire and all this stuff. So I said, I wanted to find out how much power the human spirit had. Because as you know and I know, it has more power than we will ever know. So it became that search to get that power back, not the mental power, but the spiritual power.
What do you think happened to you that day? How did you change?
I went in search. I wanted to know what happened. And it took, I did a thing called EST, EST.
Yeah.
And in that program, I went back to being exterior. I went back into that space, and I went, wow. So there's another dimension that we all have, all of us. We all have that power, spiritual power, not mental, maybe not physical. And emotions get in our way, the fear and things like this. But we all have it. And that's when I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad and all those other things, created my board game. It's not because of my brain. It's because I'm serving a mission to serve my fellow human beings.
Some kind of greater energy or a collective human consciousness.
Well, what Fuller said was this, okay? I think this is important for people to hear. Today I hear many people say, just do your passion. If you work your passion, you don't do a day in your life. And what Bucky Fuller said, again, the head of the geodesic dome, because he's one of the greatest geniuses of our times, he says, passion is selfish. Passion is doing what you want to do. Then we have purpose. Well, my purpose is to feed my kids. So you're doing it for somebody else. That's purpose. But there's another level beyond that. And what Fuller called it was part of ephemeralization, the ability to do more with less. Fuller said, ask yourself this question: what does God want done? Not what you want to do. What does God want done? And so for the years afterwards, so what does God want done that I can do? And then it got clear to me. That's why I had a rich dad and a poor dad. I'm supposed to teach what my rich dad taught me, because that's what God wants done.
How can you be of service? That's the question.
Well, no, it's what does God want done?
Right.
There's a very big difference. It's not about anything else but what God wants done. So do you think God wants cancer cured? Absolutely. Well, go do that. Well, I'm kind of busy, got a job. He wants to end violence. Well, I'm too busy. Most people are too busy for selfish reasons. I got to take care of the kids. I got to put food on the table. You know, I got to get them through college.
Excuses is what those are.
Well, no, it's the purpose is self-purpose.
Right. So there should be a higher purpose.
It's ask yourself, what does God want done? And that means you have to tune in to God. I'm not being real religious. God stands for general overall director. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so it seemed like when I started studying with Fuller for 3 years, he says, God wants everybody to be prosperous. God wants everybody to be prosperous. But our school system's keeping us poor. That meant I had to take on the school system. I went, holy mackerel, you gotta be kidding me. Then I had to take on Wall Street. Then I had to take on the banks. And I went, I don't think I want to do that. You know what I mean? That's what I have to do.
But that gives you strength, knowing that you're on a mission from God.
No, but God wants them out of the way.
Right.
Do I want to take them on? No. No, I don't. I mean, I argued with myself for a long time. You got to be kidding me. You're going to take on the school teachers union that your father ran? Poor dad. You're going to take on the colleges that teach you nothing about money? You're going to take on Wall Street? You're going to take on the bankers? You're going to take on the Treasury? Are you crazy? You're going to take on, guys like the Rothschild family, the mega rich who control the world via money? So that was back in '83. I went, you're nuts. And then I said, well, I guess I got to do it. And I was in rock and roll at the time. I had a rock and roll factory. I was working for Duran Duran, The Police, Journey, Boy George, those guys.
What were you doing for them?
Yeah, I had to give all that up, just surrender to it. And that was the same year, that was '83, met my wife, Kim. And I said, she said, where are you going? I said, I'm selling everything, I'm getting out. I'm going to find out whether God wants me to do this or not. She goes, you're nuts. And I said, I know I'm nuts, but I'm going to do it. And then she said, I'll go with you. And that's how we have one of the best marriages in the world. Because she was willing to give up her job, her life. Her parents thought she was nuts. We're homeless. We've been screwed, blued, and tattooed. We've met a lot of crooks and charlatans, but we've also met some fantastic people along the journey. But that's what I said. Is then I met Oprah, and the reason I was on her program, because she knows who I'm after. Do you know what I mean? It's the banks, the schools, the education system, to keep people poor. They teach people to be poor. Then I meet Trump, and he says, let's do a book together. But until you find your spirit that's bigger than anything, I don't know, I don't recommend it, but that's why I'm here today. So to sit with Jim Rickards and Nomi Prinz and David Stockman and the other guys who are now joining forces saying we're going after them. It's crazy because they're going to crush us.
Be a good fight though, huh?
They're coming after us already, you know what I mean?
But you're asking yourself that question, what does God want?
Yeah.
And if you follow that path, you will probably live an incredible life and do the right thing.
But you also have bad things and good things and horrible things and wonderful things. And
but come on,
and you come in, and yesterday when I sit down with you and Jim Rickards, I'm going, how did I get here? Because Jim's an insider and I'm an outsider. So it was only that we're joining forces now. Jim is saying the same thing I'm saying. Nomi is saying the same thing I'm saying. Stockman saying the same thing I'm saying. These SOBs are ripping us off. How in the world can the central banks and the Goldman Sachs and Wells Fargo and Citigroup, and they print all this money, they bust the world's economy, they rip everybody off, and they get paid billions in bonuses while millions lose their jobs and their retirements? We have more poor today in America than ever before. We have more homelessness in America than ever before because of our banking and treasury and our government system. So, that's it's almost like the classic David versus Goliath. That's when you say, okay, I'm going to take something on. So it's been since 1983 that my wife says, I'll join you, and the numbers keep growing. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, more people are coming with you.
Coming with
the team.
Well, it's not, we're all coming together, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's how yesterday was one of the biggest days of my life. I get to sit next to Jim Rickards. I meet Nomi Prince. These guys are insiders. I was some little kid, surfer kid, who was screwing up all his life from Hilo, Hawaii, who knew nothing about their world.
Tell me more about this woman, Kim Kiyosaki. 4 years ago in London, I remember you, but I remember her even more. And I met her
gorgeous,
a few minutes, and she's just got this incredible energy.
Yeah.
And then yesterday, it was right back there again. She said hi, and tell me more about her.
Kim?
What do we don't know about her, and why did she follow your craziness for the past 30 years?
Let me tell you another way of saying it. A rugby player, right? And Kim, her name was Kim Meyer in Honolulu. And I'd ask my rugby friends, I said, what's my chances of going out with her? They go, you? Are you kidding me? Every guy in town wants her. And you're just a little schmuck. My rugby friends are not the nicest guys, you know how they are. So that kind of inspired me. So the story is I had to ask her out for 6 months. 6 months. So I sent her flowers, I called her up, I sent her cards, balloons, anything. Just keep refreshing her that I was here. And she says, but I have a boyfriend. I said, I don't care, And finally, I did my market research finally. So I called one of her friends and I said, tell me something about Kim that I don't know. He said, well, her best friend is your ex-girlfriend. I went, my ex-girlfriend? I said, who's that? Well, Karen. Karen hates me, So this is persistence. So I have to call Karen up, who hates me. Hey, Karen, no hard feelings. You son of a... Look, just give Kim a recommendation from you. I've been asking for 6 months. She says, why would she go out with you? And I said, Karen, think about the old times, the good times. There are no good times with you. So finally, Karen says, you should go out with him. Then Kim thought Karen wanted to go out with me, and it was all messed up. But I finally found out from Karen that what Kim loves was a bottle of champagne and moonlight walks on the beach. I said, hot dog, $25. So finally Kim says, okay, I'll go with you just once. I said, okay. I'm a businessman. I'd done my market research. I knew what she wanted. So I lived at the time in the best hotel in Waikiki. I had no money, but I still lived in the best place. And Kim comes driving up a little orange Toyota Celica. I paid the valet $5. He says, when you see this orange Celica come up, that's her. So okay. So as soon as she drives up, the valet, Kim, you must be Kim. Oh, it's so nice to see you. She goes, Jesus, They take her car, and they show her to my room, knocks on the door, and Kim goes, Jesus. And Michelle's restaurant is the best restaurant in Waikiki, right on the ocean. And I can't even afford to go there, but I live there, So we go down to Michelle's. The maitre d' goes, oh, Robert, is this Kim? Oh, so nice to meet you. They show us to this table right next to the water. So Kim is going, holy mackerel, And then guy comes up and he says, is this the champagne you ordered? And he goes, yes, that'll do. And Kim goes, it's her favorite champagne, Because Karen told me all this. So we pour the champagne, and the maitre d' knows I don't have any money for dinner. He says, Robert, why don't you and your date go for a walk on the beach? Exactly everything she loved. And we've been together ever since.
That's pretty smooth.
What I found out is that she's more beautiful on the inside than the outside. And I think that's what you sense about her.
Yeah. And you also said she's the brains behind the operation.
Yeah, she's very, very smart. Her game is real estate. And she understands real estate. I'm more on the business side. So if you remember the McDonald's part, I'm more on the McDonald's. And then I get the money to her, and then she buys the real estate with that. And that's why we make millions using debt and pay very little in taxes legally, because that's the game. And people get angry about it, but I said, if you look at the McDonald's right next to you, that's what they're doing. You just don't know how to do it. And so that's what Donald Trump and I teach, and people like we teach. And it gets the socialist class very upset with us. How dare you not pay taxes? I said, we only do what the government asks. I pay no taxes because I provide jobs. If you're an employee, you pay the highest taxes. If you're a doctor or a lawyer, you're self-employed, you pay even higher taxes. Because the government doesn't want you to do that. Government wants you to hire people. And I get millions in tax breaks because I use debt. The government, after 1971, when the dollar became debt, government wants you to borrow money. So they incentivize borrowers, not savers. They punish savers. They charge them taxes. But they incentivize borrowers to borrow money, and then I buy apartment houses with it, and they give me a tax breaks because I'm providing housing. And so if you understand the tax laws, they're really incentives to help the government out. But it drives the socialists and the communists and the leftists nuts. That's why they hate Trump.
Right.
So it's just a matter of a lack of, qualified financial education.
And what's it like being married to your business partner? And does that work for everyone?
Well, I'm the luckiest guy on earth. She is absolutely the kindest, most spiritual, kind, never has a bad thing to say about anybody. She generally loves everybody. She sees no color, size, shape. She doesn't discriminate. She's a very loving person. When I started thinking about it, she reminds me of my mom. My mom was the most loving, my mom was so loving, she'd hug all my friends. I'm a little high school kid, she's hugging my friends, Mom, leave him alone, like this. And my dad was cold as ice. But my mother was the most loving person. So in many ways, I married my mom on the inside because my mom was not as gorgeous as Kim is. So that's the story of her. And Kim really is a rich woman. She is committed to teaching, as she says, women, when it comes to money, women are smarter than men. And I would say that's true.
And why is that?
Well, men have big egos. It's about the flashy cars and, the toys and, I got to have a new boat. And Kim doesn't want that stuff. And she's happy with her 12-year-old car. She doesn't like to go shopping, but she loves investing. That's her game.
And I spoke to her at dinner last night. She's big on the spirituality along with you. That's a mission you're both on.
Yeah.
Individually and for the company.
Well, it's for the culture of our company.
Right.
So that meeting, people come from all over the world. All we can do is encourage people to meditate, to read spiritual books, to do, I hate the word therapy, but it's not therapy, it's as Tali says, we all have pain, and sometimes it's really locked up. And there are people who are trained to go after it. So that's what we encourage.
Do you meditate?
Yeah. Every morning.
What does it do for you?
Magic. It doesn't mean it's all good, hunky-dory. There's no such thing as good and bad, because some of the worst things that have happened to me have been the best. And some of the best things that happened have been the worst. Or like my cardiologist speaking at our event, and he's very much into spirituality. He says, yin and yang. He says, inside yang is yin, and inside the yin is more yang. And inside yin is, it just goes on. The mind goes ad infinitum.
So our failures are not necessarily that, and our successes aren't necessarily that.
No, and what happens to most people is they get these highs, and then they screw up. Because every time you go up, you have to come down. And what's happening to people is they're getting addicted to the high. So they do opium and drugs and heroin and sex and alcohol. They're masking the pain inside. So what we do is encourage a more sane, healthy culture that if you're upset with something, like if I'm upset with Kim, after 45 minutes, I call Seal, who's kind of the person who knows how to handle the pain. Because the pain with Kim is only pain from the past.
Your past.
Past, yeah. So that's our agreement. If I'm upset, I call Seal. So I'm calling Seal all the time. Kim doesn't call as often. But anyway, it's a healthier way of dealing with things. Because as you know, many marriages, the stuff builds up. You know, the biggest lie in a marriage ever told was, and they lived happily ever after. No such thing, sweetheart. You know, you get good days and you have bad days. Then you have kids, it gets, you know, more challenging. But people are not trained to deal with that. And then it builds up, and a lot of times the marriage dies. The bodies are together, but the marriage is dead. You know what I mean? Or they get divorced.
Yeah. So try to deal with the everyday conflict and deal with it in a positive way.
Yeah. Because we all have pain. Right. You know, look at Prince Harry. You know, he says he goes to counseling because he was still upset about Princess Di. You know, Phelps, the gold medalist, he now is a spokesperson for therapy. Because you get to be the biggest Olympian in the world, you're coming down.
Yeah.
And what people are not trained to do is deal with that pain. So that's why we had our big meeting. I said, we're going to build a culture where people are more transparent, should I say.
Right.
It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to talk about your failures. It's okay to seek therapy, to meditate, to pray, to study spiritual things, as well as money.
Yeah. 10 years from now, I'm going to come back here and we're going to sit down again. And I want to know, what is Robert Kiyosaki going to be doing at 81 years old? What does your world look like? What does your day look like?
I don't know. It's a good question. But let's leave it with this thought that rings in my head. It was from Fuller, again, Buckminster Fuller. He says, you do not belong to you. You belong to the universe. Your true purpose may be forever obscure to you, but you may rest assured you're fulfilling your true purpose if you commit your life to the highest advantage of others. And that's the difference. So whatever is the highest advantage of others, I'll do. And that's what I'll be doing.
Wow, that's powerful. Robert, what scares you, if anything? What scares you?
Not too much, not in the normal sense of things, you know what I mean? It's, what scares me is dealing with the demons inside. Because I still have them, you know, they're still there. They'll always probably be there. So that's why I meditate. This morning, I was up this morning to meditate and handle the success from yesterday, but also what else is residual coming up. And you know, death terrifies many people. But like I said, when I had to push the nose down, right? Tell you, I didn't need coffee for about 3 weeks.
Does death scare you?
No, that's what I said. That when I had to look at death, I went to peace.
Right. And this is common. I've had a few people on my show that have had these near-death experiences, and they're in the middle of suffering and trauma, and then they're out of their body, and it's peaceful.
Yeah.
And they're connected, and then they have to make that choice, whether they're going to go back in or die.
Yeah.
And the ones I've spoken to obviously have gone back in, and for a reason, you know.
Yeah.
And they come back and tell these things, and that moment always sticks with them.
Yeah.
You know?
It was peace. You know, it felt like love. It was just peace. I was just in love with my crew. We're all facing death. Yeah. And we're just working as hard as we could, knowing that if I screwed up, we're dead anyway, but they still did their work. You know, we're going down. And the other thing that happened was about a month later, as a pilot, we don't see who we kill. It's a pretty sterile world, you know. But I had never seen anybody I killed that I knew of, because we're the gunships coming in all the time and pulling off. And then one day I was parked on this dusty field near a city called Quang Tri, where Quang Tri was the last stand. The NVA was coming down. And we're preparing for the battle for Quang Tri. And so we're just sitting around, and these boys, I was in charge of watching the helicopters because the crew went off for lunch. And these boys came out, and they were climbing on the helicopter. They're about 10-year-old boys, you know. And I said, hey, get off, get off, get off. They wouldn't listen. They're crawling around. Then I realized they might be sappers. They might be VC, Viet Cong. And then panic sets in. So I go running up to this, and I grab this one kid, and I'm screaming at all the other kids, get off the helicopters. They're not supposed to be on them. And they wouldn't listen. So I grabbed this kid, I'm holding him up like this, he's a small guy, and I just pulled out my gun and put it to his head. And I was going to kill him. Because I'd never killed somebody, I'd never seen somebody's brains blown out, you know. I said, yeah, I was yelling, and he started kicking, and he started biting me. And then I lost it. And this feeling came over me, I said, he's dead. That all of a sudden, my mother had passed away like 2 years prior. And I could hear her saying to me, stop, stop, stop. Because I was a mean kid. She says, I've done my best to tell you to cut that mean, you know, whatever she was saying. You're so mean. And she says, look, I did not give you life to take another mother's child. Think before you kill him. And I didn't know what she meant, but if I pulled that trigger, it would be forever a scar on my soul, because I didn't have to kill him. You know, at that point, the war was over, because he was unarmed. So I put the gun down, and I looked in his eyes and looked at his eyes. We both started to cry, because we knew we had come that close. I just let him go. The kid had a soccer ball. So I got the soccer ball out, threw it out, and we started playing. We're like little boys playing soccer, running around the place, you know, kicking, and then we said goodbye. And then the rest of the crew came back. And I did find the satchel charge. They did plant one.
They did? Wow.
Yeah. And I just, that's what they're taught to do.
Yeah.
The same thing is going on today, all over the world. You know, like in Syria and Lebanon, that's what they're taught to do, to kill us, kill each other.
When you see those wars happening, what do you see? When you see war around the world?
I see the pain, you know, what are we teaching kids? How can we do that, you know? But anyway, so I strapped back in, and we're flying back to the carrier. There was about 6 aircraft flying home that night. It was almost like a John Wayne movie, and we're flying out, and the sun's coming, you know, the sun's already setting to our back, and we're flying out to the ocean. You can see the carriers about 25 miles offshore, and it was, I couldn't get the boy's eyes out of I couldn't, I saw his, you know, as the Cosa Nostra says, if you want to kill somebody, don't look them in the eyes, because you see their souls.
And so what did you learn that day with that boy?
My war was over. I couldn't fight anymore. So there's an American Indian chief named Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce, and he was up in the Seattle area. And Chief Joseph has a classic line, you know, the American cavalry chased him and chased him and chased him. And these people were dying. He was like 10 miles short of the Canadian border. And they surrounded him, and they were going to kill everybody. And Joseph said he had to surrender, because if he didn't surrender, his whole tribe would be wiped out. And so he has a classic line, you know, he says, I will fight no more, no longer. And so that day, as I was flying back to the carrier, you know, after being in military school and training to kill people much of that time, my war was over. That's when I came back and I said, I better do something more productive than kill people. And so you know, this is what I'm doing today.
Right.
I can ask myself, what does God want done that I might be able to lend a hand at doing? But it seems to me that God wants people to live in more prosperity. And, you know, I don't think God likes people being poor. Maybe he or she does. But I grew up in pain of poverty, because it wasn't that we were poor. My mother and father mismanaged their money constantly. They spent more than we made.
Right.
So I see that as pain, So
Are we still going to be fighting wars 100 years from now?
let's hope not. But I think it's in our DNA. That's why.
So is poverty, though. Maybe we can get that out.
What's that?
So is poverty, maybe in our DNA.
Yeah. I think, as Bucky Fuller says, I don't think we have much more time. We better make up our minds. So that's why when you and I just sat down just now, I feel compelled to talk about more the spiritual side than the financial side.
What do you mean we don't have much time?
We're going to kill each other. As I said, human beings have not evolved, but technology has. And now, you can, with a little laptop, you can destroy a lot of things with that. So if we don't evolve, as Fuller says, God will just wipe us off the earth, bring a new batch in, and see if we get another 3 or 4 million years. We'll see if the next batch of humans gets it right.
Just a learning experience was what will be. Yeah.
But I've heard that more and more and more. Is that Fuller said we're in the final examination as human beings. We've got to evolve, because technology is evolving, but we're not. And that's the challenge. We're getting worse.
Yeah, 50 years is the consensus of a lot of my guests. That's what they say. If we can't turn it around, then it's going to go one way. So these conversations are very important.
Yeah.
What keeps you awake at night?
Not doing a good job.
Still?
Yeah. Well, you have to get better,
Why is that important?
It's just, success means you have to do a better job.
Right.
Don't rest on your laurels.
What would we be surprised to learn about Robert Kiyosaki? Something you do that we'd think, oh, I wouldn't have known you had a suit designed like a 1930s, man, but what's something that we would be surprised to learn about you?
Well, I never did well in school. I'm very, very slow in school. And I found out later on that, there's a left brain and a right brain, a subconscious mind. I'm more artistic. So when I was 5 years old, I was on display at the Academy of Arts in Honolulu. And so if you notice what makes me successful, I'm always drawing pictures. So his income statement, balance sheet, and all that. And what few people realize is that what makes me successful is I'm always drawing pictures. But that's why I flunked out of school. I flunked at English twice. I flunked accounting once. It's just I'm not very left-brained. But I hire good accountants, and I hire good attorneys, and I hang out guys for the records.
The C students employ the A students.
Yeah.
And that shows you.
We all have our strengths, all of our weaknesses. And sometimes what the strength looks like is really their weakness.
Right.
Yeah.
So you failed out in school, but that gave you all these other possibilities.
Well, I learned how to survive in school.
Right.
And in school, I always sat next to the smart girls, because at test time, I was very cooperative, but the school system calls that cheating. And today, that's what makes me successful. I work with, I hire the smartest people I know, because in my world, life is a rugby team, not a golf game. But most people go at life as a golfer, not a rugby player, or a soccer player, or a basketball player. You have to have a good team. And our schools teach us that having a good team is cheating. That's why most school teachers are poor, because asking for help is cheating. I was reading the teacher's manual of my poor dad. That's exactly what it says. Definition of cheating: giving aid to somebody in need. To me, that means being a human being.
It's that mindset.
Yeah.
Wow. Robert, if I could give you some kind of a magic phone and you could make a call to the 20-year-old Robert Kiyosaki and give that young man a bit of advice, probably this is before you went to Vietnam, what would you tell him?
I would just say keep going. Just do what you have to do. Just live it to the fullest, which I did. Nothing I ever did made sense. Could you imagine quitting a $120,000 a year job for $200 a month to go fight in Vietnam and almost die?
Yeah.
It didn't make sense, but it was the best decision I made at that time. And I think what most people do is they let their parents or their friends talk them out of life. So afraid of failing. But failing is how we succeed.
Yeah.
You look at guys like Edison and all that. They failed like 1,014 times before he invented the light bulb. You know, our schools punish you for making mistakes. And that's why we have so many people who are so afraid of admitting they make mistakes or afraid of failing. You know, all of my successes and failures was because I was too successful. If you can imagine that. When I started my first nylon wallet wallet business, I didn't fail because I was a failure. I failed because it took off. I couldn't supply the demand for it. So then I learned, well, I can't sell those wallets for myself. So my next business was rock and roll. So I had Duran Duran, The Police, Van Halen. So I went to Korea to get manufacturing overseas. Again, the business took off. And it was so big, I couldn't finance it. So it's not that I failed because I failed because I was too successful. So exactly the Zen idea that success will lead to failure. I was discovering that. But most people are afraid of failing, so they never succeed.
So follow your gut and take risk.
For some people.
Okay.
We're all different, you know.
But that's what you were doing.
Yeah, yeah. When I remember I was getting ready to go to Vietnam, I told my classmates, I said, you're giving up a job that pays you $120,000 a year. This is in 1969. It was worth a lot of money back then. I said, yeah. I said, but you might die. And my answer was, and I might live. That was it. And I went. So that's how I live my life. Mm. I don't know that everybody should do what I do, because that's not sane. Yet the person has to live their own life.
Yeah. On that same note, what's the best advice you've ever received? And I know you've written books about the best advice you've ever received, but if you had to pick one thing that you to pass on to other people, what would it be? What comes to mind?
These success secrets are only available on the London Real Academy. Become a member and get access to live shows, exclusive courses, my webinars, bonus content, meetups, live events, an amazing community, and much, much more. Now back to the rest of the show.
Final part of that question, to that 20-year-old that's out there watching us right now, what do you tell them? What advice can you give to them? Of all your wisdom, of all your life, what do you tell them?
I don't know. That old cliche, to thine self be true. But I really think that when you interviewed Lipton, I mean, if you can understand that what he was saying was that it's passed down from generations. That was pretty insightful. What's it called?
The epigenetics, or
epigenetics,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah, the expressions of those genes.
And so if you as a young person, I would take a look at what your parents taught you, and their parents taught them. And is that what you want?
And if it's not, you have to make a conscious effort to think differently.
Yes.
And break out of that.
Yes, because you'll teach it to your kids.
Right. Any final thoughts, Robert?
That should do it. I just appreciate the time.
Robert, you really are a legend. I'm sure that's strange to hear. Most people know you because of money and accounting and cash flow and amazing board games and all of that stuff. But, behind a great message like that, there's always more. And this is the first time I've ever seen it. And so I really appreciate you going deep and talking about things that some people don't understand, like near-death experiences and spirituality, and something that doesn't fit on the balance sheet.
Right.
But, there's always something like that behind greatness. There's always that will.
Right.
And thank you for showing that to us.
And that's what happened yesterday with Jim Rickards and I. When we went off script,
Yeah.
and we were saying the things that really were driving us.
Yeah.
Well, why does he come in? You come at 5 o'clock in the morning, and Jim comes at 6, and we go all day and all night. It's not the money, it's the spirit. Yeah. We have a mission to do.
Yeah.
You will be what you will to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. All the best.
Thank you very much.
The critics who always speak behind my back, maybe I want to hear them remind me, he's back, the great pretender. I hope this time he gets hurt. I love these guys. They give me fuel. If you want to reach your objective, you want to achieve it, you're going to have to be obsessive. You're going to have to be obsessed. Feel what you do. Feel it. If you're not feeling it, it doesn't matter.
It's Chris Eubank Jr. How do you explain his prowess in the ring?
Junior has that obsession, that genius, that magic. Genius is obsession, but it's in one area.
You studied the sweet science for so much of your life. How do you walk away from it? Do you miss it?
You can't walk away from it. I am it. And even when I dance, really I'm boxing. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, the one who strives valiantly.
What was the worst day of your life, and how has it shaped you as a human being?
When I fought Nigel Benn, I stood like this. It was to mask this. The risk must be taken. That's why you are London Reelers. That's why we're here. We're tired of sitting still, watching it happening for others. Let's do it.